Hey guys, it's Malachi. Welcome back to another video. I've got a little change of location today because I felt like sitting down because my back hurts. So yeah, we just got a boring blank wall for today. Casper's here too. Do you have anything to say today? Amazing, thank you as always. So ideally I'd like to get at least one video out a week, and that was the plan, and that's where we are now. So apologies for the lack of video. Hopefully this video makes up for it because I feel like this is going to be a long one. I know all of my videos so far have been quite long, but I feel like this one's going to be even longer. Just a heads up that I will have to censor certain words by replacing them with other words. So instead of the P word, I'm going to use Lady of the Night, and instead of saying the PP word, I'm just going to say genitals constantly. Gotta keep it YouTube friendly so I don't get banned, because with my last video, I didn't censor the S word, and I got an email from YouTube being like, we're concerned about you, so I'd rather not do that. I don't want to get banned or anything, so I'm just going to censor words for safety, but you hopefully know what I mean. Sada Abe's story remains one of the most famous examples of female obsession in modern times, especially in Japan, where her story is still talked about to this day. Sada caused a national scandal when she murdered her lover, severed his genitals, and then kept his genitals in her kimono until she was arrested. Yeah, so already we're just a few seconds in, and you can already tell we're going to be in for a wild ride this video. Her crime shook the entire country, and she was arrested and imprisoned for 6 years before being granted freedom. Nowadays, she is regarded as a femme fatale in Japan, where she is seen as a symbol of female power and independence. Sada Abe's story represents the important test of the Japanese culture's changing sexual morals, whether she is considered a feminist icon or a notorious murderer, which, by the way, she has been described as both throughout history. So today, let's look into this notorious case of love, obsession, and tragedy. Sada Abe was born on May 28, 1905, to Shigeyoshi and Katsu Abe. Her parents owned quite a successful tatami mat making company, which would have provided a decent amount of money for a family with 8 children. Unfortunately, however, only 4 of the Abe children survived into adulthood, now making Sada the youngest of the living 4. Despite the loss of half of her siblings, Sada had a pretty good childhood. They were a middle-class family in the Kanda district of Tokyo. Her mother doted on her a lot, allowing her to do as she wished, and encouraged her to take up singing lessons and lessons in playing the shamisen. Though people were quite surprised to learn of her mother's encouragement to play the shamisen and take singing lessons, as at the time, both of these activities were more closely associated with geisha, an occasionally lower-class profession. And since the Abes were considered an upper middle class family, those around them were shocked that her parents were fine with their youngest daughter participating in those activities. I mean, there are worse things that a child could be doing. I mean, I get it was a different time and stuff, but there are worse things, and you will see that when we talk about her siblings in a moment. Sada was considered a generally good child in her parents' eyes, the type that could do no wrong, especially when compared to 2 of her siblings, Shintaro and Teruko. Her brother Shintaro was a notorious womanizer. After his marriage, he ran away with his parents' money. Sounds like a lovely son. Teruko, her older sister, was known to have several lovers, and even though Shintaro was basically doing the same thing, the womanizer thing, and Teruko was just doing it with men. This is where the sexism comes in of the time, because my lord, is the sexism infuriating. Because, unfortunately for Teruko, as a result of her having several lovers, her father sent her to a brothel. Which at the time, by the way, was a pretty common way to punish female sexual promiscuity in Japan. This is why when a woman says that they're born, specifically a woman, when anyone says it, I'm like, but when specifically a woman says that they were born in the wrong generation, I'm just like, girl, do you know what it was like to be a woman back then? Oh my god, I would not have survived. This day and age is the most rights and freedom a woman has ever had. And even then, some countries are taking those rights away, and some women never even got those rights. But I'm getting off topic now. Just this day and age sucks, but at least we have some sort of rights. I really do feel for Teriko, and like any woman back then, I'm like, nah, this is getting me heated, so I'm gonna move on. But you'll be glad to know that their father eventually bought Teriko back. Bought. Not brought. Bought. Because she was now considered a lady of the night because she had been sold to a brothel. So he brought her back home, and the only reason he brought her back home was because her past wasn't considered a hindrance to the family's reputation. But that was purely because the Abes were a middle class, an upper middle class. That is the only reason why it didn't affect their reputations. Her past wasn't considered a hindrance to marriage for those of someone with the Abe family's class. Lucky Teriko? I don't know if I consider that lucky or... and, I mean, she did soon marry after that, which I guess is nice. I don't know. Hopefully, all we can do is hope it was a good relationship and a good marriage, and if so, great for Teriko. If not, then... Some of the things in this story are going to shock you, because even though it was different times back then, just the way people acted was so... I feel like some people just didn't have a heart. And you'll see that as we progress with the story, especially towards Sada. Because now, at 14 years old, Sada Abe's life was about to change forever, and not in a good way. As her siblings continued to create more problems for their parents and their reputation as a family, Sada was often sent out of the house alone. It was during this time that Sada befriended a group of similarly independent teenagers who she began to spend a lot of time with. One day, when she was hanging out with this group of friends like she had done previously, this day was different. This one day, 14-year-old Sada Abe would be raped by one of her so-called friends. The only identifying piece of information that I could find on this piece of shit was that he was a Keio University student. Now, upon finding out about the rape, Sada's parents appeared to be supportive of her, but obviously the rape had a profound negative effect on her, as it would anyone, but especially someone of such a young age. So of course Sada was becoming more distant, more antisocial, disobeying her father more. And in retaliation, her parents' decision was to change their response and turn against Sada. They claimed that she had apparently become uncontrollable and irresponsible. And as a result, kind of like Teriko, they sold her to a geisha house in Yokohama. Apparently, they did this in hopes that it would bring the Sada they knew and loved back. I'm getting so mad. It's just like, Parents of the Year award right there. Like, your child has been raped and you're sending her to a geisha place? Like, isn't that just a brothel? Like, oh my god. But it gets worse, because not only are her parents against her and her two older siblings are pieces of shits in their own way, her oldest sister, not to be confused with Teriko, but Toku, her oldest sister Toku, testified that Sada wished to become a geisha. Well, that doesn't sound as bad as anything the rest of them have done. She took her parents' side. And like, I don't know about you, but I would want to console my little sister who'd gone through something like that. But again, different times, I know, and I'm trying to just push through that. But Sada herself claimed that her father made her a geisha as a punishment for her promiscuity. So not only are two of her siblings kind of shitty people in their own way, now her parents and oldest sister have turned against her. What a perfectly normal response to someone who's experienced horrific trauma. Never mind Parents of the Year, Family of the Year right there. I know stuff back then was different and people weren't as knowledgeable on stuff, and come on, didn't people have any sort of compassion? Like, I know it was all about reputation and stuff in most Asian countries, I think, like bringing dishonor to your family, but the poor girl, it's not like she went out there and chose to have sex with people at such a young age. She got raped. How was that her fault? Oh my god. Just because she started acting the way any person would after being in that situation. Instead of being a dick to her, I don't know, maybe try and comfort her? Did anyone actually ask her how she felt, or did you just expect her to like carry on as normal? Anyway, I'm getting heated now. Sada was now 17 and the geisha life was proving difficult. She was often frustrated and disappointed as the other girls she worked with had grown up in the geisha structure, while others had gained an apprenticeship and had spent years training and studying arts and music. Sada never progressed beyond a low rank and was never really seen as a true geisha by the other girls. And of course, this wasn't helping her feel any better at all. And despite having a far better education and way more knowledge about the world than the others, her counterparts considered her more of a lady of the night. In fact, one of her main duties was to provide sex for her clients. Her knowledge made her quite popular with many clients, providing her a lot of work over the years. But after 4 or 5 years as working as a geisha, Sada unfortunately contracted syphilis. By 1925, syphilis could be controlled but not cured. This meant that she would be required to undergo regular physical examinations, and this is something that geisha girls wouldn't have to do, but legally licensed ladies of the night would. So ultimately at this point, and who could blame her, Sada decided that if she was going to be treated like a lady of the night, then why not become one? She thought that she'd be better leaving the geisha life behind and working at a brothel in Osaka. And besides, it was a better paying profession, so in her eyes it was somewhat of a win-win, if you ignore the whole syphilis thing. Now working as a lady of the night in Osaka's famous Tobita brothel district, it wasn't long before she gained a bad reputation. She had become quite the troublemaker at the brothel, stealing money from clients and even attempting to leave the brothel several times. But due to the well-organised P-word institution system, she was soon tracked down and returned to the brothel after every attempted escape. Though to be honest, I'm not surprised that she acted the way she did during her time at the brothel, as working in these kind of establishments came with their whole degree of problems and dangers. Geishas were protected by the reputation and custom of the institution, but when working as a lady of the night outside of a geisha house, there was little to no control, and her clients could come from all walks of life, meaning that probably the vast majority of them had very little, if any, respect for her at all, which just would probably have her scared for her life. This made Sada realize that she soon needed to find another career, and after 2 years of working as a woman of the night, she eventually succeeded in escaping the brothel and took up a job as a waitress. And while this was a much safer line of work, she wasn't as satisfied with the pay. It wasn't as good as her previous job, which is kind of unsurprising. So she decided to go back to being Lady of the Night. You're going to see a pattern here. This brings us to 1932, and Sada is now working as an unlicensed Lady of the Night. She is no longer licensed like she was previously, so she could get in a lot of trouble. During this time, Sada's mother passed away, so in January of the following year, she traveled to Tokyo to not only visit her father, but also visit her mother's grave. I'm not sure whether she attended the funeral or not, but I know for a fact she went to visit the grave, so. During this time, Sada decided to continue working as an unlicensed Lady of the Night, now entering the prostitution market in Tokyo, where she decided to stay. But in the following year, her father became gravely ill. Oh no, how tragic. And despite literally selling her to a brothel, Sada was a dutiful daughter, and she decided that she would look after her father. Apparently, she nursed him for 10 days until his death. Following her father's death, she continued to work in the profession that she had become so accustomed to, where in October of that year, she was arrested during a police raid on the brothel she was working in at the time. Despite being unlicensed, or in other words, an illegal lady of the night, a man named Kinosuke Kasahara had taken quite the liking to her, and since he was a well-connected friend of the brothel owner, he arranged for Sada to be released and paid her bail, and then he paid for her to be his mistress. But Sada wasn't happy in this relationship, as not only would Kasahara refuse to leave his wife to marry her, he also refused for Sada to take another lover. So Kasahara was a massive hypocrite. And of course the relationship didn't last, so to escape Kasahara, she fled to Nagoya, wanting a better life for herself. I think we're in 1935 now. The dates are all messed up where I look. Like, no matter where I looked, there were different dates on different websites, so don't quote me on the dates, but I think we're in 1935 now. And Sada had found a job as a maid in a restaurant because her relationship with Kasahara actually poisoned her will to continue as a Lady of the Night. But it's through this job that Sada met a high school principal, Omiyagoro. But for possibly the first time in her life, she had found herself being more romantically than sexually attracted to this man. I need to read this bit to you because I don't want to get it wrong because I kind of find it funny. Apparently, she even later described their sex life as unsatisfying, Alpha Omiyagoro. But I'm also sharing that with you because that further proves the point that she is was more romantically attracted to him than sexually. However, due to Goro's political ambitions to run for office and public office, and partially due to the restaurant most likely firing her if they found out about the relationship, because having an intimate relationship with a customer back then was kind of frowned upon, because in those days it was common for Japanese-style restaurants to be a cover-up for brothels. So genuine restaurants had to really maintain their image. Actually, Goro himself was the one who had recommended to Abe a way that she could better her life and gain some control over it. Maybe open a restaurant of her own. And in doing so, Goro actually helped Sada gain an apprenticeship position in a restaurant. So in 1936, Sada returned to Tokyo once more to uptake her position in Yoshida. Yoshida was a restaurant in the Nakano district, a recently absorbed suburb of Tokyo. Yoshida was opened in 1920 by a man called Ishida Kichizo. Now keep that name in mind because it is very important. Ishida was only 26 when his restaurant opened, and it just so happened that Ishida Kichizo was a notorious womanizer. And while Sada initially came to Yoshida with the hopes of gaining control over her life, she soon gave in to Yoshida's advances towards her. And so the two became lovers. Sada had found herself completely and utterly infatuated with Ishida. On the 23rd of April, the pair met up for what was supposed to be a short, intimate session. Apparently, this intimate session ended up being one that lasted 2 weeks? They had a 2-week-long lovemaking session, and Sada herself even claimed that they continued to make love while the room was being cleaned around them. So when the housekeeper came to the room, they didn't stop. They were like, no, you can come in, but we're going to carry on if that's okay with you. Sounds like they both had quite the libido and lack of shame, or maybe they were into that. I don't know, it's none of my business. I don't really want to think about it, to be honest, especially as an ex-housekeeper. Oh god, I have so many stories about being a housekeeper. Unfortunately for Sada, Ishida had to return to the restaurant on May 28th, just 15 days after the love-making session began. You'd think 15 days was enough time for them to spend together. Was it that bad without internet back then? Was it that bad that two people could spend 2 weeks making love? Like, I am so glad to be alive today, not back then. But this is where things started to get a bit, dangerous, as every time Ishida had to return to his wife, Sada found herself being overcome with jealousy. And this time, once Ishida left, Sada immediately fell apart, and her obsession with him only grew stronger. So much so that she resorted to heavily drinking to try to cope and to calm herself down. During their time apart, Sada went to see a play. She hoped that this would distract her from her thoughts and obsession. However, the play was called Jinsaku Suya Monogatari, meaning New Tales of Erotic, and it featured a scene where a geisha killed her lover with a knife to prevent them from leaving her. I'm sure you can see where this is going at this point, maybe. The scene affected her deeply and set her mind down a dangerous path, which at this point, Ishida-obsessed Sada was already heading towards a breakdown. The next day, she actually went to a hardware store and bought a large kitchen knife. When Ishida finally returned to Sada, during their lovemaking this time, she put her newly acquired knife to the base of Ishida's genitals and said she would make sure he would never play around with other women. Ishida laughed at this, probably thinking that she was joking, because who wouldn't think that? Or at least hope that. But honestly, this is some pretty good foreshadowing here. 2 nights into this bout of intimacy, Sada began choking Ishida. He told her to continue, saying that this increased his pleasure. She also had him do it to her as well. The pair used Sada's obi, and obi is basically the sash from a kimono. And they used this obi to cut off each other's breathing during an orgasm. And apparently they both enjoyed it. At least the Wikipedia page said they enjoyed it. I feel like I know way too much about these two people. And they're both looking down or up at me and just... Oh, I know so much more than I need to. They repeated this for 2 more hours. Do these guys have nothing else to do? Like, the man runs a restaurant, his wife probably runs it while he's off shagging some other woman. Once Sada stopped the strangulation, Ishida's face apparently became distorted and wouldn't return to its normal appearance. Ishida took 30 tablets of a sedative called Carmotin to try and soothe his pain. According to Sada, Ishida started to doze and told her, "You'll put the cord around my neck and squeeze it again while I'm asleep, won't you? If you start to strangle me, don't stop, because it's so painful afterwards." Sada commented that she had wondered if he wanted her to kill him, but in reflection, realized that it was probably a joke. The girl really doesn't know how to read a room. At some time during the night, though, Ishida had opened up to Sada about his children and how much they meant to him. He stressed how important his children were to him, and this unfortunately proved to be a fatal mistake. As Ishida Kichizo fell asleep for the final time, Sada's mind was racing. She lay awake thinking about the future. Their future. That's when Sada realized that Ishida wasn't going to leave his wife for her, as that would mean abandoning his children and giving up his restaurant. Two of the most important things to him in his life. This also made her doubt that he would ever agree to a S-word pact, end life pact, if you know what I mean. And because of that, Sada just couldn't imagine her life without him. So upon realizing all of this, Sada decided that she had to take her lover's life. I mean, not to be an arsehole, but she could have just took her own and we could have avoided all of this. Not that I think she should have done either of the things. I don't think she should have killed him, and I don't think she should have took her own life, but like, I never understood that I can't have him, so nobody can. Like, just can't say I've ever been madly in love with someone to a point of if I can't have them, nobody will. But then again, I'm not in that situation, and I'm also not in 1900s Japan, so I can't really comment on it, to be honest. And I also don't want to sound ignorant. But anyway, at about 2 a.m. on the 18th of May in 1936, while Ishida was sound asleep, Sada wrapped her sash twice around his neck and strangled him to death. To quote Sada, "I cried saying, 'Forgive me.' Ishida muttered a moaning sound once, shook his hands wildly, and then became numb. I let the string go, but my body was shaking uncontrollably, so I gulped down the bottle of sake on the table and made a knot in the string around the center of Ishida's throat so he would not come back." She later told the police, "After I killed Ishida, I felt totally at ease, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from my shoulders. I felt a sense of clarity." Obviously, this is not the logic of someone with a healthy mind. With her intense abandonment issues and diagnosis of syphilis, it's no surprise that everything she'd been through up to now had triggered some sort of mental breakdown, a psychotic break even. One that Ishida obviously failed to notice, or as some theorized, maybe he did notice, but encouraged it so that she'd depend on him more. Though, of course, that is just a theory. We don't know if Ishida did or didn't notice this and what his intentions with Sada were in that respect. Her actions after killing Ishida seemed to confirm her dissociation from reality, as she had quite a strange reaction to his death. Like, this is the most important person in her life right now, and her reaction to him no longer being there and her being the one to take his life is so bizarre. So what exactly did she do? Good question. Sada went to sleep beside Ishida's corpse, and once waking up in the morning, she began to fondle him, his corpse. And it was only after fondling the corpse that she realized that she needed to go and make her escape. But of course, in good old Sada fashion, she wanted to keep a part of Ishida with her and ultimately decided to take his genitals. It was almost as if she carried through with that earlier threat and ended up severing his genitals and keeping them on her. Once having severed his genitals, she began to write a message in the blood that was coming from the open wound that was once his genitalia. The message said, "We, Sada and Kichizo Ishida, are alone." This was written on his left thigh and on the bedsheet. She then began to carve the character for her name, Sada, into his left arm. After putting on his underwear, she left the inn at about 8 a.m. and told the staff to not disturb Ishida. But because of this, Ishida's body wasn't discovered until the next morning, and I can only imagine what the scene would have looked like. He was found lying in the room where the two had spent many passionate days and nights together. This kicked off a nationwide manhunt for Sada, and a hysterical reaction in the press, which was partially due to the scandalous details of the case, but also due to the Japanese folkloric tradition of the dofuku, or in English, poison woman. Dofuku are essentially a femme fatale who end up contaminating and or destroying the lives of those around her. Sada Abe was now Japan's real-life poison woman. After leaving the inn, Sada met her former lover, Goro Omiya. She repeatedly apologized to him, but Omiya was unaware of the murder and assumed that she was apologizing for having taken another lover. In actuality, Sada's apologies were for the damage to his political career that she knew his association with her was bound to cause. And after Ishida's body was discovered, a search was launched for Abe, who had gone missing. On May 19th, 1936, the newspapers picked up the story, and as Sada had predicted, Goro's career was ruined, and Sada's life was under intense public scrutiny from that point onwards. The circumstances of Ishida's death caused a national sensation. The ensuing frenzy over the search for Abe was called the Abe-Sada panic. Over the next few days, police received numerous reports of sightings of Abe from various cities, and one false sighting that nearly caused a stampede in Ginza, resulting in a large traffic jam. When in actuality, Sada Abe was still in the city. Sada was staying in a hotel under a pseudonym, where she had a massage and drank 3 bottles of beer. She spent the day writing farewell letters to Goro, an unnamed friend, and Ishida. Sada had planned to take her life by jumping off the peak of Mount Tacoma a week after the murder. Sada herself said, "I felt attached to Ishida's penis and thought that only after taking leave from it quietly could I then die. I unwrapped the paper holding them and gazed at his penis and scrolled. I put his penis in my mouth." If anyone can overhear me, right? If anyone in my family hears me right now. "I put his penis in my mouth and even tried to insert it inside me. It didn't work, however, though I kept trying and trying. Then I decided that I would flee to Osaka, staying with Ishida's all the while. In the end, I would jump from a cliff on Mount Tacoma while holding onto his penis." Man, with all that description right there, I felt like I myself was holding Ishida's balls in my hand. She goes into quite the detail, I'll give her that. It's kind of hard to say that her story is false when there is so many little details that she just felt were necessary. If I mention something that doesn't seem necessary, but it's kind of gross, if I have to read that, you have to hear it, okay? We're in this together, you and I. On the Malachite Sticks channel, we all traumatize each other. Definitely a strange case, 100%. Imagine confessing that in a court, or to the police, or writing about it in your own autobiography. Like, some things are just meant to stay in the draft, Sada. However, Sada would be arrested in the afternoon of May 20th, only 2 days after the murder. At 4 in the afternoon, police detectives suspicious of the alias under which Sada had registered came to her room. When the officers arrived, Sada was quick to reveal her identity to them, but for whatever reason, the police didn't believe her. She told them, "Don't be so formal. You're looking for Sada Abe, right? Well, that's me. I'm Sada Abe." And when the police were not convinced, in good old Sada Abe fashion, she whipped it out, Ishida's severed genitals, and showed it to them as proof. Sada was arrested and interrogated over 8 sessions. When asked why she had severed Ishida's genitalia, she replied, "Because I couldn't take his head or body with me. I wanted to take the part of him that brought back to me the most vivid memories." The interrogating officer was struck by Sada's demeanor when asked why she had killed Ishida. Immediately, she became excited, and her eyes sparkled in a strange way. Her answer was, "I love him so much. I wanted him all to myself, but since we were not husband and wife, as long as he lived, he could be embraced by other women. I knew that if I killed him, no other woman could ever touch him again, so I killed him." Sada's arrest became a public sensation, instantly making her somewhat of a celebrity, if you could even call her a celebrity, to the people, at least the people of Japan anyway. I doubt anyone outside of Japan knew of this, or at least very, very few people. The first day of Abe's trial was November 25th, 1936, and by 5 a.m., crowds were already gathering to attend. The judge presiding over the trial admitted to being sexually aroused by some of the details that involved the case. Why would you admit that? I think I overshare and then I read this shit and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not so bad. However, he said that he made sure the trial was held with the utmost seriousness. I don't know how much I trust his word on that. This was Sada's statement before receiving sentencing began. "The thing I regret most about this incident is that I have come to be misunderstood as some kind of sexual pervert. There had never been a man in my life like Ishida. There were men I liked and with whom I slept without accepting money, but none of them made me feel the way I did towards him." On December 21st, 1936, Sada Abe was convicted of murder and mutilation of a corpse. The prosecution demanded that she get 10 years, and Sada herself demanded the death penalty. Like, she confessed that she wanted the death penalty. Despite all this, she was only sentenced to 6 years in prison. Apparently, this was due to the fact that the court had recognized her diminished mental state at the time of the murder, which, fair enough, I guess, but 6 years for a murder and mutilation of a corpse? Some people get put away longer for robbery. Sada was confined in Tochigi Women's Penitentiary, where she was prisoner number 11. The sentence was commuted on November 10th, 1940, on the occasion of the 2600th anniversary celebrations of the mythical founding of Japan, when Emperor Jimmu came to the throne. Sada Abe was released exactly 5 years after the murder on May 17th, 1941, and kept a pretty low profile after that. So, if my research is correct, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, please, she got 6 years but only served 5? Like, damn. We know what we know about Sada and the crime and the following information I'm about to share with you because Sada ended up writing a book in which she gave a detailed confession. Of course, this is just her side of the story, and unfortunately, we'll never get to hear Ishida's side of the story and what potentially really happened. I'm not saying Sada is lying, but there's always two sides to a story. The factor that makes us want to believe that Sada is being truthful in what she's told us about the story is that, unlike previous criminal autobiographers, Sada stressed her sexuality and love for Ishida. Like, she showed, in her own twisted way, some sort of remorse. Not remorse for killing him, but I don't really know how to explain it, but she showed emotion, she wanted punishment, so that makes her stand out from like those stone cold killers who are just deadpan in the courtroom, don't care, and just don't even want to take accountability for their crime. She did. She took accountability and she wanted the punishment. So, in my eyes at least, that makes her story believable. And when her book was first published, it became a nationwide bestseller. And this is the thing about Japan. A lot of serial killers from Japan, or killers in general, once being released from jail, they end up writing books about the crimes that they did and stuff like that. And then they end up becoming the bestseller in Japan. And I'm just like, if they're going to write a book, the money should at least go towards the victims' families. It's a bit different in Sada's case, I know that, but I hope at least some of the money went towards his wife and children because they were completely innocent in this. Like, they had no part in this at all. Imagine you lost a loved one to murder and it was like a brutal murder, but even just murder in general. And then the person who killed your loved one releases a book about how they did it in graphic detail. That's just, you'd have to relive that shit all over again. And just now, complete strangers know about things that you don't want complete strangers to know about. And in this day and age, you'll probably get trolls saying horrible shit about it too in your DMs and stuff if they found your social media. While I admit I would happily read Sada Abe's book or even Issei Sagawa's book, he's for another video, don't worry, I do have a video planned on him. While I would read a book like that, I'd want to buy it secondhand because I wouldn't want to directly give that person money. Again, it's kind of different for Sada, but anyone else where it's like Issei Sagawa, I wouldn't want to give that filthy bastard my money. Like, stuff like that annoys me. But I'm going off on a tangent anyway. But yeah, let's not support serial killers or just generally horrible people. Let's one person buy it, scan it, put it online, and we can all pirate it. And if the police are watching this, for legal reasons, that's a joke. Upon her release from prison, Sada understandably assumed an alias. She was now the mistress of what she called a serious man that she only ever referred to as Y in her memoirs. She first moved to Ibaraki Prefecture and then to Saitama Prefecture. Y supposedly knew that she was Sada Abe, but they agreed to keep it a secret between the two of them. But Y's family and friends ended up finding out, and upon finding out, Sada broke off the relationship with him. She did not want people knowing who she was. The Second World War brought a new lease of life to Sada Abe, both literally and metaphorically. Literally, as the arrival of penicillin potentially freed her from her syphilis, or at least helped her to cope more with the side effects of it, and metaphorically as Japanese society and its condemnation of her was utterly shattered. This new climate was more open to regarding Sada as a victim of both male exploitation and of her own broken mind. Thus, she was recast as a feminist hero of sorts and a symbol of freedom from her oppressive political ideologies. Sada Abe remained a popular subject for books and movies alike throughout the following decades, most notably 2 films about her and Ishida. Tanaka Noboru's A Woman Called Sada Abe and Oshima Nagisa's In the Realm of the Senses. The now infamous Sada Abe disappeared from the public eye in 1970, when the film In the Realm of the Senses was being planned in the mid-1970s. Director Nagisa Oshima apparently sought out Abe and after a long search found her hair shorn, so basically a shaved head because I didn't know hair shorn meant that, and she was in a nunnery in Kansai. According to Kagero Mitsuki, around 1992, the cannibal murderer Issei Sagawa somehow tracked down Sada to a nursing home in Izu City, Shizuoka Prefecture, which just feels like some sort of a fever dream to me. Like, can you imagine Sada Abe, this like notorious killer who severed a man's genitals, and the infamous cannibal Issei Sagawa in a room? What kind of conversations would they have? I mean, I can think of a few reasons why he tracked her down. I will go into this more in detail in the video that I want to make on him, but he was a really perverted guy. So whether or not he heard the crime and was like, she used to be a lady of the night, I'm going to shoot my shot, because yes, he was that delusional. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. Now, in one of the pieces of research I read, it said that she presumably died in the nunnery, but if Kagero Mitsuki said that Issei Sagawa sought her out and she was in a nursing home, then surely she died in the nursing home and not the nunnery. But I guess that depends on whether or not the Issei Sagawa story is true. But since at some point in her life she was supposedly in a nunnery, it gives us hope that her once troubled soul finally found peace. Even today, Sada Abe is well known in Japan and still talked about. Just ask about anyone in Japan, and there's a good chance that they'll know who you're talking about. In fact, she's still so famous today that people still go to visit the brothel where she was, I'm presuming, where she murdered him. I thought it was where she murdered him, but then others are saying it's where she was arrested, but she was arrested in a hotel and not a brothel, so I don't know. The research for this one was kind of confusing, I'm not gonna lie, so I do apologize in advance if there is any mistakes. Feel free to correct me in the comments, I'm completely open to that. And I will add any corrections to the description, so look out for that if you want to see if there's any corrections. But yeah, people still visit the brothel or hotel today where she was, despite it being no longer in service and pretty run down. Even today, some people in Japan see Sada Abe as a innocent woman, even though she is quite clearly not innocent when it comes to murder, since as what led up to the murder of Ishida Kichizo was likely contributed by her rough upbringing, and also the trauma of being raped at such a young age and having syphilis. There are many potential contributors that led up to the murder of Ishida, and I guess in some sort of twisted way you can kind of understand why people feel sorry for Sada Abe and why they choose to see her as innocent, despite literally having confessed to her own crime and there being so much evidence.
で今テレビで初めて本人がその事件の真相を語る。
殺してくれって何べも私に言ったんだからね。だからあそこを出る時にね、何かを持ってきたいという気持ちになるのはこれは当たり前のことでしょ。何かその人をね、人間をぶっておくわけにいかないわね。そしたらやっぱり男のそのものを持つしかないわね。ちょっと浮気とかちょっといいなと思うのはあるでしょうね。いっぱいそれは人間ですからね。けども真から好きだってのは一人じゃないかしら。ごめんなさい。
彼女はこれを最後に私たちの前から忽然とその姿を消してしまった。
I'm curious to know what you guys think though. Like, do you think she's innocent? Not necessarily when it comes to murder, but innocent in the terms of like she wouldn't have done that if things were different. Do you condone her actions? Is what she did right? Is it okay for her to be seen as some sort of feminist icon despite everything she did? Did she deserve her celebrity status? Or do you think she's just as bad as any other person who takes an innocent man's life? Should she have had a longer prison sentence or even the death penalty? It is pretty obvious that the events leading up to his death probably pushed her to snap and cause that mental breakdown that made her murder a man, especially when it's someone so important to her like Ishida was. But again, it's not the first time we've heard of crimes like this. There are a lot of, if I can't have him, nobody can crimes, and just, I personally don't understand the mindset, and it's hard to not judge because as a human, it's what we do. We judge pretty easily, but I feel like this is one of those situations where everyone involved is an arsehole. I don't think Ishida deserved to lose his life. I don't respect cheaters. I think cheaters are trash. Like, just grow up and break up with someone if you don't want to be with them. If you get a thrill out of cheating, you're a piece of shit. But yes, he was a cheater, but he didn't deserve to lose his life. And again, think about his children and his wife. Her reason for killing him was because she loved him and she wanted nobody else to have him, and that logic just doesn't sit right with me. I'm not going to kill someone because I love them. But then I started thinking about how once she was released from prison and until she died, she never committed another crime, or at least she didn't murder anyone else. I don't know if she had any lovers after prison. She hadn't. Why, obviously, because she mentioned that. But if there were any others, I'm unaware of them. I don't know if she ever spoke about them. But she didn't kill them, and that's a win. I'm going to presume she didn't die having a partner because she ended up in a nunnery, so I'm going to say that's a hard no on her having a lover. She didn't commit another crime for as long as she lived, and that's definitely something that is pretty redeemable in some ways. So maybe she didn't deserve a longer prison sentence. Maybe 6 or just the 5 that she served was enough for her to rehabilitate herself. Maybe it was just a one-off due to how bad her mental health had deteriorated at the time. Maybe if she had gotten the right help, she wouldn't have done that. Maybe Ishida would have still been alive. It just makes you ask so many questions and start thinking about the ifs and the buts. Like, if Goro had been more open about the situation of their relationship, would they have ended up breaking it off? And would she have gone with Ishida? We will never know because everyone in that story is pretty much dead now, apart from maybe Ishida's kids. There is nobody left who was alive at the time to ask about the crime. It's so easy to talk about what could have been, but unfortunately what happened happened, and there is no changing that. Despite everything, I hope everyone who was directly affected by Sada's actions found peace and were able to live out the rest of their life happily, or at least as happily as they could. And I also hope that Sada herself found peace in the end too, because she was quite the troubled person and she didn't deserve anything that happened to her. I'm not in any way excusing her murdering someone, because no, I wouldn't do that. But she didn't deserve anything that happened to her. But that is the story of Sada Abe and how she came to murder her lover, Ishida Kichizo. Hopefully I told this in an okay way. There were a lot of facts that I really wanted to get right, but the research and all the different people saying different things made it a bit hard. Again, if there are any corrections you would like to make, please tell me in the comments, and if possible, link your source so I'm not just taking your word for it, because you could literally say anything and my gullible ass would believe it. So please link your source. If there's anything I missed that you would like to add to, let me know, and any corrections and add-ons will be available in the description. But that is it. We've discussed Sada Abe. This is my first true crime video. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be more. I really like Japanese true crime, especially. There's just something a lot more intriguing in it. So expect a lot more Japanese true crime, though I am going to cover true crime that isn't Japanese as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying something out a little different with the editing as well, so my face isn't on screen as much and there's other stuff going on to hopefully keep your attention. But that is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for joining me today on this interesting video of what is Sada Abe's life, or what was, should I say. And please do let me know what you think down below in the comments. Have you even heard of Sada Abe before? I just knew her as the woman who severed her lover's genitals for so long. But yeah, that is today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to leave a like if you liked the video. Maybe leave a comment telling me your thoughts on Sada Abe's interesting life. And subscribe. Okay, bye.